District Attorney Sandra Doorley, Sheriff Todd Baxter. My name is Chris Rochester. I'm at the Rochester Public Library in what's called the Quiet Room. I should never be at the Rochester Public Library, and I am because of your fanaticism, extremism, and hatred. So I contact you again on YouTube because on September 17th, September 19th, September 21st, you received the Freedom of Information Law, which is right here. It's 17 documents, it's 51 documents right there. And the reason why I'm telling you you received Freedom of Information Law, because that's the receipt right there. It's 3 for Sandra Doorley, 3 for Todd Baxter, and 3 for Alex Renzi. And what you're going to do is refuse to comply with every single one. I will continue to send you the Freedom of Information Law at least 3 times a week. And when you receive it, it will be 17 documents. And every single time you refuse to comply with the law, I am particularly interested in the names of my prosecutors of silence. I have been in jail 6 times, and 6 times a prosecutor from the District Attorney's Office of Sandra Doorley has not talked in court. How is any citizen in Monroe County Jail once when a prosecutor doesn't talk in court? And a reason why I'm being returned to jail is I read your payrolls on YouTube. And that's how I know that on one page of the payroll, there are 12 employees that make $100,000 or more, Sheriff Todd Baxter. And that's how I know on the last page of the payroll, there are 10 plus employees that make $10,000, including Camille Miller. It's Camille Miller, the daughter of Kathleen Mills. Kathleen Miller married to Andrew Mills, and all in the family sheriff's office, and that's nepotism. And you refuse to answer. When I contact Thomas P. DiNapoli, I will write language informing him that I believe that there's rampant nepotism at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and for him to investigate it. I'm investigating it, and you can blow me off. You don't have to answer me. The duly elected control of the state of New York, you will have to answer. And I believe that if Thomas P. DiNapoli audits the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and the Monroe County District Attorney's Office, he will uncover unethical financial practices. I do not know if he will uncover illegal financial practices. But since you're corrupt, I would not be surprised if there's both. You're definitely doing unethical things with money. There's no doubt about that, based on the payroll, based on the fact that you have children of your employees on the last page of the payroll. That's a disgrace. So I'm going to begin, and I don't know how long I'm going to be on here, with your usual fanaticism. And I have on my phone, Sheriff Baxter, a picture of my little guy. And that's him right there. If you can see him, he was with me for 8 years, and I can see him and I smile. Because dog owners love their dogs. And if you, Sheriff Baxter, and you, District Attorney Sandra Doorley, have a dog, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm nothing special in the fact that I love my dog. You're supposed to love a dog, and that's him right there, the best little guy. So I'm going to tell you about him and how you introduced yourself to me and him. So, and this is fanaticism and hatred and buffoonery in the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. I've said this a number of times on YouTube, but I don't think I've held up a picture of him. That's my favorite picture of him. And this is a reason why I despise and detest the police. And I will despise and detest the police for the rest of my life because of this day and multiple other days that are unforgettable. I walk my dog for 7 years and 4,000 times on land behind my residence that has no ownership. And alongside my residence, I take him out the front door, walk him alongside this strip of land that can be seen from Penfield Road to land behind the residence. And Timothy Murphy, the Monroe County Office of Real Property Tax Service, says and can confirm that anybody owns this land. I'm walking my dog on unowned, unoccupied land. That's not a crime. And even if the land is owned and occupied, it's no reason for the sheriff's office to come to my residence when a simple phone call can be made about a complaint. And the complaining, Layla Kumar Neeraj Shah, 50-year-old man who lives with a 7-year-old mother, don't simply come over to my residence. They call the sheriff's office demanding you come to my residence to seize my dog. And this is fanaticism and hatred and corruption. I walk up my dog like I usually do. The back window from this repulsive shack to Shaw Law Firm flies open. 2 Monroe County Sheriff Office employees there. This is a vicious confrontation where I say, you'll have to kill me to take my little guy from me. and they left. The reason why I was able to adopt a dog with my ex-girlfriend Laura Riley when I lived in Webster is I displayed the character to adopt. When you go to Lollipop Farm Humane Society, they screen the citizens that seek to adopt a dog. And one of the questions Laura and I were asked is, have you been arrested? And the answer is no. And I thought it was laughable when I asked that, as I've now been in jail 6 times. And if I wanted to go back to Lollipop and adopt again, I would be rejected. They would turn me down because they would find out what's happened to me. It doesn't matter now when I proclaim my innocence and state my innocence. It's irrelevant. So here's this vicious confrontation with Monroe County Sheriff's Office where you're demanding my dog. And how often does that happen, Sheriff Todd Baxter? Where you show up to the residence of an innocent citizen and demand his dog. What is wrong with you at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office? This is why people hate the police. As I'm 57, I've had long experience in observing and reading the news about the police. And I have never seen hatred for the police in the United States of America in the year 2022 that I did 20 years ago or in 1990 or 1980 when I was still in high school. There were movements to defund the police because of the police at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and the way your fellow psychopaths, Todd Baxter, behave. A psychopath Sheriff Baltimore employee goes to the home of an innocent citizen and demands his dog. And what are these 2 employees of yours going to do? Go back to your Jonestown and tell everybody how they went to a citizen's house and seized the dog? And that's exactly what they wanted to do. So I begin with that story that I told on YouTube before because it enrages me. And I have to remain composed when I tell that story. And I'm going to show you a picture of him again. Him. People love their dogs with their heart and soul. I'm nothing special. The best little guy. I'm nothing special in that regard. What are you doing coming to my residence to demand my dog? I have this picture of him on my phone for a reason. Because it's happiness and joy, that's why. It is ordinary to love your dog. It is extraordinary for a sheriff's office to come to the home of an innocent citizen to demand that citizen's dog. When all that citizen is doing is walking the dog the same way for 7 years and 4,000 times. So, party switching degenerates and sociopaths. This is the Freedom of Information Law, dated September 17th, September 19th, September 21st, right here. This is 51 documents that you've received. When I say you received them, I think, because today, here is District Attorney Sandra Doorley. There's the signature right there by your employee, Sandra Doorley. There's your name. So, you got it. Here is Alex Renzi, K. Rockwell. There's the signature right there for K. Rockwell. What I didn't receive is the sheriff's office card. Are you going to refuse these documents? Do you know? I'm guessing. I do not know. Because the district attorney's office came back, the sheriff's office came back. Excuse me, the district attorney's office came back and Alex Renzi came back. But the sheriff's office didn't come back. Why? Are you going to refuse? I don't know. So, what I'm also demanding, Sheriff Baxter and District Attorney Sandra Doorley, is a list of defendants in Penfield Town Court, which Paul C. Metzler and James Mully Jr. will refuse to comply with. Paul C. Metzler, see this? You're going to get this tomorrow. James Mully Jr., see this? You're going to get this tomorrow. It's in an envelope. Just like that. And it's going to say, list of defendants in Penfield Town Court. And you will refuse to comply with the laws. The laws jump to you and you're corrupt. Paul C. Metzler and James Mully Jr., why have you refused 15 plus times to send me a list of defendants in Penfield Town Court? I'll tell you why. Because every citizen is guilty. There's no one acquitted. It takes thought and morality and decency and ethics to acquit a person because you have to evaluate why the defendant's in court. Any idiot, any buffoon, any moron, any corrupt stooge, which is what you are, Paul C. Metzler and James Mully Jr., can pronounce somebody guilty, and that's what you do. Every single defendant is guilty in Penfield Town Court. That's what I think. The confirmation of that fact is when I get a list of defendants, and you're refusing, Paul C. Metzler and James Mully Jr., to provide me with a list of defendants. Why? Because you're corrupt. That's why. So, now, it is the Freedom of Information Law here that is blank. I'm going to write new information on here, such as the facts and circumstances for how you, Sheriff Todd Baxter, terminated the employment of Brandon Gadis. Does his name sound familiar? Every time someone's fired at the sheriff's office, I demand to know the facts and circumstances. I will write a new Freedom of Information law, and I'll write it on that blank foil there, for the termination of employment of everybody at the sheriff's office. Employees are fired for cause like Brandon Gadis. I believe, since I'm doing this, remember, he robbed a gas station or a convenience store or something like that. It's a serious crime this Brandon Gadis committed. His picture was on WHAM, and I stared at him in really astonishment that here's a sworn officer of the law at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, and there's his mugshot. So, and what is really sickening, and I'm guessing, is someone like Brandon Gadis that gets to the point where he commits a crime, there are so-called warning signs about his behavior where he's doing things, saying things, and comporting himself in such a way where you know that he's capable of committing a criminal act. So my question, Sheriff Todd Baxter, and you'll refuse to answer because you're not accountable to anyone. And I'm going to write the specific questions about Brandon Gadis. Was he counseled about his behavior leading up to the point where he committed this crime, I believe it was a robbery, and then he was fired? What was he doing before you got to the point where you fired him, before you terminated him? The reason why I asked that question is that the blue wall of silence exists. And the blue wall of silence is used to describe corrupt police officers who cover up the crimes of corrupt police officers. You're a corrupt police officer, Todd Baxter. So was Brandon Gadis doing things before his employment was terminated because he committed a crime that was brought to your attention? Was he counseled about it? And you will refuse to answer. So now, Sheriff Todd Baxter and District Attorney Sandra Doorley, I'm going to begin to read again the Freedom of Information Law documents. And I'm not just going to read them like I usually do, which is 18. I'm going to pause. I'm going to tell you why I'm demanding this information for however long this YouTube lasts. 7 more times. It's a library. And if you watch, you watch. If you don't, you don't. Because what I'm doing is I'm talking to employees of the United States Department of Justice. I work for Merrick Garland. I'm talking to the United States Attorney for the West District of New York, Trinity Ross. And I'm talking to the Office of Governor Kathy Hochul, and you need a Moral Act Commission to investigate you. And this is what's going to arrive on September 23rd, or I wrote it for September 23rd. You already received this 3 times, as I just told you. So I'm going to begin, and I'm going to tell you why I'm demanding this information. And you're going to exist in a delusional, psychotic 1984 where you're not going to comply with any Freedom of Information law. This is one of the most significant and important pieces of legislation ever passed by both the state legislature in Albany and my former employers, United States House of Representatives, United States Senate. Because it empowers citizens to be active in government and to do what? Demand information, which is what I'm doing. How basic and simple is it? It is basic and simple, but not for you, because you're corrupt. This is the Freedom of Information Law. The first 2 I wrote because, as I'm a veteran of 2nd Squadron, 17th Cavalry, I'm familiar with the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and particularly the Article 15, and how it works. And I have been in the courts martial and seen how it functions. I've seen the military process up close, and it is fair. This is not a fascist operation where someone is just simply declared guilty. 41A goes alongside the 101st Airborne Division, and one of the common ways for a soldier to be in a courts martial receiving Article 15 is to get a DWI by coming back onto the 101st, and they would get stopped by the MPs, and they would be arrested and charged with DWI, and then that places them into the Uniform Code of Military Justice courts martial in Article 15. And my question, Sheriff Baxter, is do you have such an equivalent? You are a veteran, and thank you for your service. Do you have a equivalent process at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office to the United States Army process, that is the Uniform Code of Military Justice and the Article 15? And the answer is no. I'm going to prove it right now. Freedom of Information Law. The internal disciplinary records documentation for employees at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office of Sheriff Todd K. Baxter. That Sheriff Todd K. Baxter is reprimanded, terminated, and disciplined employment at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office. What's the answer to that question? And the same thing for the suits. The suits is you. Sandra Doorley and Donna Karan? What's the process at the district attorney's office? There is a difference between a uniformed officer of the law that holsters a weapon and an attorney that works in an office and doesn't have to face violent criminals and investigate cases. But how do you discipline your employees? District Attorney Sandra Doorley. The internal disciplinary records of documentation for employees of the Marlborough County District Attorney's Office, District Attorney Sandra Doorley. That District Attorney Sandra Doorley is disciplined, reprimanded, terminated from employment at the Marlborough County District Attorney's Office. Should you fire an assistant district attorney who doesn't talk in court and a defendant in such a courtroom is sent to jail? The answer is yes. Prosecutors talk in court. That's the way it works in the United States of America. If somebody would have asked me at any point in my 10 years at Albany, my 5 years in Washington, D.C., can a defendant in a courtroom be sent to jail when a prosecutor doesn't talk? I would say that's ridiculous or ludicrous or similar language. That makes no sense because the prosecutor talks in court. 6 times I've been in jail, total silence. I have prosecutors assigned to my cases. Those prosecutors you refuse to identify must be terminated from employment at the district attorney's office. You're not going to do anything. Sandra Doorley, for the simple reason, you're corrupt. The internal disciplinary records of documentation for employees of the Marlborough County District Attorney's Office, District Attorney Sandra Doorley, District Attorney Sandra Doorley is disciplined, reprimanded, terminated from employment to the Marlborough County District Attorney's Office. And I add, should be disbarred. I will pursue disbarment for every single one of these hacks and sociopaths assigned to my cases. But I cannot do that with the Appellate Division of State Supreme Court if I don't have the names because you, Sandra Doorley, refuse to disclose the names. Freedom of Information Law. The names and salaries of every public employee at the Monmouth County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Todd Baxter. Freedom of Information Law. The names and salaries of every public employee at the Monmouth County District Attorney's Office, District Attorney Sandra Doorley. Now, another thing that I will do to add to the Freedom of Information Law is demand raises for your employees. And I do not have the payroll in 6-month periods. You were both elected, I believe, in 2017. I believe you, District Attorney Sandra Doorley, have been in office for 10 years. Sheriff Todd Baxter was elected in 2017. I think you, Sandra Doorley, were elected 4 years prior. I'm doing this from memory, but you have already been in office. But this is my question as I belabor this, is how's the process for giving raises? If I had the payroll from 2 years ago and I had it every 6-month period, then I'd be able to look at it and see all the employees that have raises. I don't have the payroll anymore because the one payroll I had from the office was taken from me. I will write a Freedom of Information Law to demand over the last 5 years the payroll beginning in 6-month periods from that 5-year period. I want 10 payrolls from 5 years so I can look at how you've done your raises. This is called full disclosure, public disclosure. What do you think about what I just said? The reason why I say this is that I have been a public employee. And when I worked for Senate Majority Leader Ralph Marino, this is a long time ago, 30 years ago, I started at a salary of $25,000. And then I was given a raise of $35,000. Then I went to work for Governor George Pataki, and my salary was $40,000. And I was given a raise to $55,000. And then my next raise was $72,000. So I was getting raises, and these raises went in the newspaper too, in the Times Union of Albany, along with my other colleagues too, because the media was demanding the payroll for what's called the executive chamber in Albany and the majority leader's office, and then they would do what I'm trying to do to you. See how the raises would deliver to the employees. And my salary was in the newspaper, and I wasn't embarrassed. I didn't care. I didn't give a damn. And I would say I deserve that money because I work hard. And what I didn't receive, I'm going to get to, is overtime. During my public employment in Albany, Washington, these salary was a salary. There was no money earned in a 41st hour. So, what do you think about what I'm saying to you? What you're thinking is I should be arrested and I should be in jail for demanding public information. That's what you're thinking because you're psychopaths. That's the way psychopaths think. So, these next 2 laws, I hope, will enrage the citizens of Monroe County, especially when I contact the Democratic Chronicle and radio and television stations. Because it's one thing to have a salary, and then that's your salary. The public employee that works the 41st hour and knows that employee knows that overtime can be earned and will intentionally work 60 hours a week, 70 hours a week, 80 hours a week. Your employees can drive around in those vehicles up and down streets and roads in Monroe County doing nothing and be paid overtime, Todd Baxter. Does that happen? I don't know. I'm guessing that does happen. You know if it happens. The public employee in the abuse of overtime is in every state, every big city, and perhaps every sheriff's office and district attorney's office. Because it's greed of the heart. Is there greed of the heart at the district attorney's office, sheriff's office? I believe the answer is yes, but you're corrupt. And you're going to prove you're corrupt by refusing to comply with these next two Freedom of Information laws about overtime. Total cost of overtime, or time and a half, while paid beyond a base salary is calculated at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Todd Baxter. Total cost of overtime, time and a half, while paid beyond a base salary is calculated at the Monroe County District Attorney's Office of Sandra Doorley. In Albany, I don't know how it is now. It's a long time ago when I worked there for Senate Majority Leader Ralph Reno and Governor George Pataki. There was something called compensatory time, where since there was no overtime, you worked your 40 hours, and then every hour beyond the 40th hour would accumulate into what's compensatory or comp time. And you hear this phrase all the time, I have comp time. I had at one point 500 hours of comp time because the New York State Legislature is in session from January until the end of June, 6 months. And frequently, when I say frequently, that's really an understatement. It sometimes be 7 days a week. I would be working, I'd get there at 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'd work until midnight. Well, there's the standard 9 to 5 job. Every hour beyond the 40th hour accumulates to compensatory time, and you can accumulate 500 hours. And then when September 1st comes around, you can take that 500 hours and go work on a campaign and still receive your state paycheck. This is a form of double dipping, where you are still a state employee, where you're getting your state paycheck, even though you were not going into the office. And then you're working on a campaign where you received a campaign paycheck because you're using your compensatory or comp time. That's why I know that overtime can be abused, that is possibly abused at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office and Monroe County District Attorney's Office. It's my experience with comp time. So, also in Albany, I was a very young man, 25 years old, and I was sitting at my desk in the press office, and my boss's name was Ed Martin. Ed worked for Senator D'Amato for a long time, and my other boss's name was John McCardle, and he had worked for Senator Marino for 10 years at that point. These were older men that I respected and I admired, and I learned a lot from. Well, I'm sitting there one day, and my desk was right outside where John and Ed worked, and I really would be at their beck and call. They'd call my name, I could run into the office, whatever you need. Well, one day I'm sitting there, and my colleague, her name was Olivia, was in front of me, and an older man came up to her, stood behind her, who I knew was an older staffer, and placed his hands on her neck and began to rub her neck in front of me. I'm looking at this nauseating spectacle of this old gray-haired man rubbing my coworker's neck right in front of me. She sat at her desk, and then he walked away. And this was really horrifying, where I didn't say anything to her, and she didn't say anything to me. And I've always remembered that about this man placing his hands on her and her reaction to it. So, this is in between this, forcible touching and sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is different than forcible touching. Sexual harassment is man asking a woman out on a date over and over and over, and she's under siege with no. Sexual harassment is lewd, vile, vulgar, so-called jokes on email or in the office that make it impossible to focus and concentrate. It has any number of ways it descends on the mind and soul, including touching, when you should always keep your hands to yourself. And there are different degrees of it. One's way to sexual harass a female, which is an older man placing his hands on the neck of my coworker, rubbing her neck, is different than other ways that it can take place that manifest itself in the workplace. And it can happen 100, 200, 300 different ways. Is there sexual harassment as you understand the term District Attorney Sandra Doorley in the Monroe County District Attorney's Office? Is there sexual harassment? You understand the term Sheriff Todd Baxter in the Monroe County Sheriff's Office? What's the answer? Is the answer yes or is the answer no? Was the answer I don't know and I don't care and it's none of your business? So, Freedom of Information Law. The cost of taxpayers to Monroe County Sheriff Todd K. Baxter has expended taxpayer dollars set up employment-related discrimination lawsuits fair to comply with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Freedom of Information Law. The cost of taxpayers of Monroe County District Attorney Sandra Doorley expended taxpayer dollars to settle employment-related discrimination lawsuits fair to comply with Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a monumental struggle. It should have been passed right after Brown versus the Board of Education in 1955. And it wasn't because of segregationists such as Strom Thurmond in the South, using the filibuster to prevent civil rights legislation from passing and denying minority citizens and minority voters franchise. One of the most disgraceful, disgusting, sickening episodes or periods in the United States history. So, under Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which is legislation that protects the rights of every single American citizen, is language regarding sexual harassment. Is there sexual harassment at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office? Is there sexual harassment at the Monroe County District Attorney's Office? Freedom of Information Law. What's the answer? Freedom of Information Law. The cost of a surveillance device purchased with taxpayer dollars by Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter fixed to a building 2020 on Penfield Road to monitor Christopher Chichester at 26 Sandra Drive walks from the parking lot next to the building. This is the sick lunatic fringe. When I use the phrase surveillance device, it's your camera, Todd Baxter, that you bought. That's what I believe. If the camera's already on the building, you're using that technology at 2025 Penfield Road, then tell me. I'm walking through the parking lot one day to go to Gold's Gym in Fairport, and there are shots outside. This 50-year-old parasite lives with his 70-year-old mom, and he starts to scream at me. I don't know why. 4,000 times I walked through this parking lot. Shah goes to the sheriff's office. Shannon Miner's $67,000 salary calls me. I do not know. She set me up for an arrest. And this is what I believe, that you, Sheriff Todd Baxter, put the camera, also called the surveillance device, on 2025 Penfield Road. Because after I have this confrontation with Neeraj Shah, that's when Elliot Roth, who works at this building in 2025 Penfield Road, called Consumer Insights, says to me, you're going to be arrested. And I believe he says to me, you're going to be arrested because he knows that camera's on the building. Who put it there? Did you place that camera on that building? And I've seen the images because my public defender agrees you don't have to mail them, so you can't lie about that. And what you're thinking is, how can you lie about that? Because you're a liar, Sheriff Baxter. That's why. And so are your employees like Michael Radner and Kathleen Miller. Surveillance device. Did you place it and buy it on 2025 Penfield Road, or was it already there? The cost of a surveillance device purchased with taxpayer dollars by Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter fixed to a building 2025 Penfield Road to monitor Christopher Chichester at 26 Amazon Drive. Walks through the parking lot next to the building. What is the answer? You refuse to answer. Because you're above the law. Freedom of Information Law. I go to your Facebook page and I see 12 Monroe County Sheriff Office employees in a pool in their wetsuits. I'm staring at this freak show. I'm thinking, what is going on here? I don't have the photograph of it. In my next YouTube, I'm going to get the photograph of your employee's underwater pool, along with your photograph of Ryan Fisher in Atlanta, Georgia. And I'm going to hold up these photographs of your employee's underwater pool and Ryan Fisher in Atlanta, Georgia. Sheriff Baxter, what's the purpose of this photograph and why are you promoting it? Do you have a dive team for Lake Ontario or other bodies of water? I don't know. Why do you want people to know that your employees are underwater in a pool? It's ludicrous. It's ridiculous. Cost of taxpayers for photography sessions approved by Monroe County Sheriff Todd Baxter to photograph 10 Monroe County Sheriff Office employees underwater in a pool. I go to your Facebook page. I think it was Facebook. It could be your Monroe County Sheriff Office website. And there's Ryan Fisher standing outside Mercedes-Benz Stadium with his canine dog Lola, this beautiful German Shepherd. I'm looking at him in his uniform outside the stadium. I think this is for the Super Bowl, but I don't know. I said I'm doing this from memory. I don't know if this is just one of a regular season game or if the Super Bowl was held there, but he's there. Why is Ryan Fisher in Atlanta, Georgia, in front of Mercedes-Benz Stadium with his canine dog Lola? Is this for a conference, Sheriff Todd Baxter? I love these conferences. Back to my experience, especially in Albany. In Albany, there is the Capitol, which is 5 stories. Then you take the escalator down to what's called the concourse. Then you can walk, and it's about a mile long, underneath the Empire State Plaza. It really is phenomenal. This is one of the masterpieces, the architectural marvels of Governor Nelson Rockefeller. And you'd see your friends or coworkers or the people you would see around Albany down there in the concourse, especially from lunch to 1 p.m. And it would really be terrific to be there down there on the concourse and see these things. So The reason why I mention this is because of out-of-state travel. And it is always a political liability for elected officials to send their employees out of Albany to conferences, and where they're just talking and doing nothing. Was Ryan Fisher in Atlanta, Georgia for a conference? And the reason why I cite Albany is because I would see these conferences all the time in the Capitol, in the rooms down on the concourse that I just mentioned, and other places such as the Egg. If you know Albany, you know the Egg. And I would think, what are they doing here? This is ridiculous. You should be at your job. The conference is ridiculous. It's useless. There's no reason for an employee ever to be at a conference. I don't care what it is. All it is talk, do your job. Was Ryan Fisher in Atlanta, Georgia for a conference? Or was he just there for the Super Bowl? Do you, Sheriff Baxter, go to these conferences? I believe the answer is yes. I'm doing this from memory. I think I saw you were at a conference a year ago. I read in the Democrat Chronicle that you were there. You were out of Monroe County. I could be wrong. But I will write a Freedom of Information law to demand full disclosure from you for when your employees leave Monroe County. It's one thing to have a conference in Monroe County. You could say, well, it's the county that the employee lives and works in. If you're sending your employees out of Monroe County to Albany, Washington, D.C. for a conference, then that's getting raised to people of Monroe County. In the United States Army, there's the physical training test. It's different, and I can only go from my experience, and I'm nothing special in that I'm a veteran. You know, just like people who claim they love the dogs, they should have a higher morality just because I served in the 101st Airborne Division. I'm a veteran. It makes me one of millions, and it's ordinary normal. I'm proud of my service, but this is 30 years ago. From 1985 to 1988. I was a young man, and I enlisted to receive the GI Bill. It's nothing patriotic. Oh, I want to serve my country. I thought GI Bill's $10,800. I need that money, and that's how I earned my degree at State University of Stony Brook. So I'm a veteran, not because I have a great sense of patriotism, because I was attracted to the GI Bill, and I knew it was going to be 3 years, and I served, and I'm 85, and it was the time of my life, and the best decision I ever made, and I'm nothing special in that regard. So in the Army, the reason why I cite this, and I try not to descend into narcissism, but when I'm on here, I want to talk about my experience, because my experience is in these Freedom of Information laws. And this is next one I wrote because of my experience in the Army. That's why I cite that. There's the PT test where you have to do push-ups, sit-ups, and a 2-mile run. And it's 100 points for each maximum, 300 points to max out on the PT test. Well, if you fail the PT test, you're flagged. And if you're flagged, and I would do this paperwork for the colonel, because you come to me and say, flag this guy, meaning you can't get promoted, you can't receive an award. You're effectively doing nothing until you pass the PT test. You have to be in acquired physical shape, because if you're deployed into a combat zone, you have to have physical strength in your body. Do the Monroe County Sheriff Office employees have the required physical strength? The answer is no. You know why, Todd Baxter? Because they're overweight. It is disgusting. The number of employees I see in their uniforms, how overweight they are. 20 pounds overweight, 30 pounds overweight, 40 pounds overweight. That's because you don't have physical training PT test. You're overweight, Todd Baxter. And what kind of example are you setting? When I saw you in the Labor Day parade and you walked right by me, I mean, I laughed and I said your name too, and you acknowledged me and said my name. And after I walked away, the first thing I thought is he's overweight. You're overweight, Todd Baxter, so lose weight. Freedom of Information law. What are the physical training standards or requirements of the Monroe County Sheriff's Office, Sheriff Todd Gate Baxter? You have none. I knew Michael Radler was a Monroe County Sheriff's Office employee for 20 years and retired. I just concluded he was a double dipper, because since he's still at the Sheriff's Office and retired, he's going to get a new paycheck. And then when I received the payroll, the first name I went for is your name, Michael Radler, $0. Are you paid private money from the campaign accounts Todd Baxter created in 2017 to work the Monroe County Sheriff's Office? Are you paid private money from the campaign accounts Sheriff Todd Baxter created in 2021 when he ran for re-election? What's the answer? Are you going into work because you're Mother Teresa at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office? You want to serve for $0? Michael Radler, are you paid any amount of money to work at the Monroe County Sheriff's Office? The day and year Monroe County Sheriff Todd Gate Baxter rehired Michael Radler after his 20-year career with the Monroe County Sheriff's Office ended. At your jail, you do not separate the violent inmates from the non-violent inmates. I was walking around with a 6'8", 300-pound man accused of murder in Rochester. separate the nonviolent inmates from the violent inmates, to preserve and protect their lives and the lives of the jail employees. The name and charge of every inmate of Monroe County Sheriff Todd K. Baxter of Monroe County Jail from January 1, 2018 to December 23rd, 2022. The name charge is that simple. Because I want to contact these individuals. And the reason why I want to contact these individuals is to ask them this question. Were you violently attacked by a Monroe County Sheriff Office employee at Monroe County Jail? I'm writing everything down that I see at the jail. And a Monroe County Sheriff Office employee is in my vicinity often. I go back to my jail cell one night. He enters my jail cell. He goes to take my pad. I pull it away. You're a Monroe County Sheriff Office employee. Grabbed my arm, twisted my arm around my back, took my pad and pen from me, and left the jail cell. And he walked around reading my notes. And this is a violent attack. The way he took my arm, shoved my arm up behind my back. So my arm is bothering me. It's moderate pain. And I tell the jail employee at the desk, I need to go see the nurse. That's all I said. And who comes to get me? The Monroe County Sheriff Office employee at the jail that violently attacked me in my jail cell. I go to the nurse and I explain to her in detail, more detail here, about what happened to me. And she said to me, who attacked you? And I replied, the guy standing behind me. Freedom of Information Law. Documentation of the case of Christopher Chichester before John P. Lomenzo Jr. in Pemberton Town Court. What's the name of the prosecutor, Sandra Doorley? I go there to answer these disgusting concoctions. Criminal attempt second by $67,000 Shannon Meyer. Harassment second by $79,000 Andrew Reale. While I'm sitting in the backseat of his vehicle, I'm not harassing anyone. I look at John P. Lomenzo Jr. I look to my left at the prosecutor. From your Monroe County District Attorney's Office, Sandra Doorley. Total silence. What's her name? How am I delivered to Monroe County Jail when your prosecutor in the District Attorney's Office doesn't talk? Documentation for the case of Christopher Chichester before Paul C. Metzler in Pemberton Town Court. What is the name of the prosecutor, Sandra Doorley? Unlike my appearance before John P. Lomenzo Jr., this prosecutor is not even present. On one occasion. On another occasion, he was there. What's his name? This is the 5'2" 3-piece suit boy who has been there and hasn't been there in my multiple appearances. I do not know the number of times I've appeared in Pemberton Town Court, which is what I'm demanding from Paul C. Metzler and James Mullen Jr., and they'll refuse to tell me. So I've been in court without my prosecutor. I've been in court with my 5'2" 3-piece suit boy, and what's his name? Because Christina Harper, the public defender's office, said to me regarding him, the prosecutor's not backing down. I failed to understand this vengeance of the heart from this boy who doesn't even talk to me. Do you think that it's unethical for an assistant district attorney to call someone who's going to be defending in court and find out facts and circumstances? Because it's not. Why doesn't your prosecutor call me and talk to me, Sandra Doorley? Because he's corrupt, that's why. Just like you. This is the one, the judge, that truly enrages me, because unlike John P. Lomenzo Jr., where the prosecutor is silent, and unlike Paul C. Metzler, where I could see the boy in front of me, in front of Alex Renzi, there's no one. Not only are they not talking, they're not even appearing. It's just Alex Renzi. You're doing this to me. You're forcing me in front of this former employee of the district attorney's office, where an assistant district attorney is not even there. They're invisible. This is my invisible prosecutor. As ridiculous and laughable as that sounds, I have an invisible prosecutor. I cannot see this person. Unlike with Paul C. Metzler and John P. Lomenzo Jr., where I know they're like this. If these two prosecutors from Paul C. Metzler and John P. Lomenzo Jr. were right in front of me, I'd be able to identify them right away. With this prosecutor, I don't even know what he or she looks like, or if I have multiple prosecutors. Sandra Doorley, do I not have a prosecutor assigned to my most recent appearance before Alex Renzi in New York State Supreme Court? I don't know. I'm not being facetious or sarcastic. Is that really true? Do I not have a prosecutor assigned to Alex Renzi for my case? Well, I'm trying to find out right now. Documentation for the case of Christopher Chichester before Alex Renzi in New York State Supreme Court. What is the name of the prosecutor, Sandra Doorley? This was mailed today to you, Paul C. Metzler. You will sign for it. This next foil that I'm going to read, if I had it, I'm going to show you right here. This is Paul C. Metzler. This is James P. Mullen Jr. Paul C. Metzler, James P. Mullen Jr. You will sign for this tomorrow. A list of defendants in Pemberton Town Court for Paul C. Metzler. And She, Paul C. Metzler, District Attorney Sandra, and Sheriff Todd Baxter, will refuse to comply. The list of defendants in Pemberton Town Court for James C. Mahoney Jr. District Attorney Sandra, and Sheriff Todd Baxter, James C. Mahoney Jr. will refuse to comply with this, even though it's a public proceeding. And I want to list the defendants in front of the retired John P. Lomenzo Jr. The list of defendants in Pemberton Town Court for John P. Lomenzo Jr. And I demand that list using his Freedom of Information laws. I'm now finished reading the FOIL, so I can contact these defendants. When I sat in Pemberton Town Court for one of my appearances, there was a woman right next to me. When I sat down, I immediately recognized her because she's a cashier at Wegmans, and I really like her. I'd go to her line. She was so friendly and nice, and we occasionally small talk. And the reason why I remember her, and this is the last time I saw her, she was in total consuming fear sitting there. And she said to me, I haven't done anything wrong. And I did not press her on details because of how upset she was sitting there. She wasn't crying, but she was either on the verge of it, and if she was crying, I didn't notice it. And I remember thinking, the abomination of Pemberton Town Court, where there is not a jury of 12, there is not a witness stand for witness testimony, there is not a table for a defense attorney to defend it, there is not a table for a prosecutor. And here she is, who's going to appear before the Paul C. Metzler and James C. Mahoney Jr. in total fear. I will never forget her sitting next to me in Pemberton Town Court. And she will be on a list of defendants in Pemberton Town Court that I demand, and you, Paul C. Metzler and James C. Mahoney Jr. will refuse to provide. So, now, I'm going to conclude with criminal contempt second. There's a new way to cut grass. My grandfather in Queens, New York in the 1970s had an old-fashioned push mower, I think it's called, where he would push the mower, and I would look at him cutting the grass, and this thing made a ridiculous noise that nobody could hear except at the residence there in Queens. And he let me use it sometimes. I would say, Grandpa, can I mow the lawn? And it was an old-fashioned, this thing was probably from the 1950s that my grandfather had. And I can still see it. And it would cut the grass without making any type of noise. And then my father cut the grass in Long Island in the 70s and 80s with a Sears Roebuck mower, and he would let me cut the grass. And it would make a noise like anybody else's lawnmower. It would make a regular lawnmower noise, just like all the other residents there in suburban Long Island, a little village called Lake Grove, where there is no lake. Now, what I've noticed over the last 10 plus years or 15 plus years is in a way to cut grass. I just saw these tractors at the Bryant Memorial Library, and they're there all the time. Every 3 days, they cut the grass at the Bryant Memorial Library. And I was there once when they showed up when I was on TikTok talking to you, and then it starts up right next to me. I'm astounded at how often these gigantic tractors are in public spaces and places. Well, if they're in public spaces and places that's private, that's public, like the Bryant Memorial Library, and that's just the way it is. Well, I lived in my residence for 7 years, and there's no tractor ever. When Dr. Gloria Nichols was my dentist, 2033 Penfield Road. Then when she leaves, and these parasites, Layla Kumar and Neeraj Shah, show up, these employees on the tracks from Broccolo Tree and Lawn Care, there all the time, including 7 o'clock in the morning. What would you think, Todd Baxter? You're just sleeping with your wife, Mary. And all of a sudden, there's Broccolo Tree and Lawn Care at 7 o'clock in the morning right next to your bedroom window. Well, I have not been able to find out the law in Monroe County that regulates these parasites on the tractors from Broccolo Tree and Lawn Care or the so-called landscaping businesses. But what do you think the guy's wearing on his head when he shows up at 7 o'clock in the morning right outside my bedroom window? It used to be my bedroom window. What do you think he's wearing on his head, Sheriff Todd Baxter? He's wearing these earmuffs on his head. The guy in his tractor is wearing these earmuffs because the tractor's so loud. So when I called the Monroe County Office of Real Property Tax Service and I spoke to Timothy Murphy, he cannot confirm to me that there's any ownership of the land alongside and behind my residence. The individual in Monroe County responsible for confirming land ownership hangs the phone up on me. And Layla Kumar and Neeraj Shah don't have the documentation. When I bought my house in Guilderland, New York in 1997, my realtor, her name was Gloria, gave me a document and she said, this is the land you own. It was on a cul-de-sac and it had a marking on it or affidavit or some type of required notary public mark. And she said, this proves you own the land next to your house. Well, that's ordinary. That's the way it works. Documentation proves land ownership and where you live. Layla Kumar and Neeraj Shah have no such documentation. I have 10 plus envelopes I was mailing to them saying, confirm to me, tell me that you own the land alongside and behind my residence. So they don't have the documentation, Layla Kumar and Neeraj Shah. Timothy Murphy, the Monroe County Office of Real Property Tax Service, can't confirm it. And he has Broccola Tree and Lawn Care with this thing on his head right next to my residence, 7 o'clock in the morning. So I walk outside my residence one day when I know that there's no ownership of this land. I tell Steve Desmond, Broccola Tree and Lawn Care, nobody owns land, and walk back to my residence. Your $67,000 cipher sickening, disgusting hack, Shannon Meyer, got together with Steve Desmond of Broccola Tree and Lawn Care, and she says to him, I want to arrest this Chris Chichester, or words to that effect, get him to come out of the house. That's the lunatic fringe, and that's exactly what happened, because I said this to Desmond and to Albert Broccola and Lori Broccola about their employee in registered mail return receipt. It says in my documentation to Steve Desmond, you called Shannon Meyer of the Monroe County Sheriff's Office because you met with her. She told you to call her. So you're using a civilian named Steve Desmond to get me to come out of the house when I'm not committing a crime. Because it's not a crime to tell Steve Desmond that nobody owns the land next to my residence. You party-switching stooge, Todd Baxter. You are such a joke, such an abomination. You don't even know what constitutes a criminal act. Fire $67,000 Shannon Meyer, and you won't, because the blue wall of silence prevents you from firing her. So I'm going to be in contact with you relentlessly, District Attorney Sandra Doorley and Sheriff Todd Baxter, with this. This is a Freedom of Information law that is blank. I'm going to demand the same information from you that I just demanded, and I'm going to demand new information. And you, Sheriff Todd Baxter, and you, District Attorney Sandra Doorley, will refuse to comply with the law every single time because you each are above the law.